Welcome to today's Explainer. I am incredibly excited to have you here today because, well, we're tackling what is arguably the ultimate unsolved mystery of our time. We live in this era where technology just seems totally indistinguishable from magic. But today, we're going to turn the lens back onto the very thing creating all that magic in the first place: human consciousness. Our source material today breaks down this absolutely fascinating contrast between the artificial intelligence we're building and the biological reality we're actually living. And I promise you, by the end of this explainer, you are going to look at your own mind, and probably your smartphone too, in a completely different way. Right out of the gate, we've got to talk about scale. 1 trillion. When we look at modern AI, specifically systems like GPT-4, we are talking about roughly 1 trillion parameters. That is a staggering, completely mind-bending amount of computational architecture. Data's flowing through these colossal server farms at lightning speed, processing inputs, crunching numbers, outputting text. It's vast, it's fast, and mathematically speaking, it is an absolute titan of modern engineering. But here's the catch. For all of those trillion parameters, there is a fundamental absence in that machine. It's not conscious. It has absolutely no inner life. It just computes. But then we look inward. 86 billion. I want you to just pause and really think about that number for a second. Your brain, the very organ you're using right this second to listen to my voice and make sense of this explainer, is made up of roughly 86 billion neurons. That's a mere fraction of the parameters found in something like GPT-4. Yet unlike that massive trillion-parameter server farm, your 86 billion neurons possess something extraordinary. You actually experience things. You feel, you understand, you are aware, you're conscious. Section 1, Mind versus Machine. Okay, let's dive into this. To really wrap our heads around this architectural contrast, let's look at the physical reality of our biological hardware. Those 86 billion neurons in your head, they are communicating across 100 trillion connections. And here is the part that is just purely amazing to me. This entire biological supercomputer runs on about 20 watts of energy. That is literally less power than a standard household light bulb. AI server farms require these specialized, massive cooling systems and giant power grids just to function at all. Well, you can sit there and ponder the meaning of the universe on a simple piece of toast and a cup of coffee. Your mind achieves something infinitely more complex than a machine, and it doesn't using a fraction of the power. It really puts our own engineering into perspective, doesn't it? Section 2, The Illusion of Thought. It's very easy to get fooled by what we've built, but we really need to look closer at what is actually happening behind the screen. When you ask an AI a deep, complex question, is it actually thinking? No. It is pattern matching at an enormous scale, and nothing more. It's essentially just predicting the next word based on a trillion mathematical weights. It's pure math. But then, consider the human brain, which somehow possesses true conscious experience. We don't just predict the next word, we actually feel the meaning of the word. AI is completely lacking that true subjective reality. It's a masterful illusion of thought, whereas you are the real deal. Section 3, The Hard Problem. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this profound difference naturally forces us to pivot into a much deeper philosophical inquiry. We have to ask the big question here. Why does this difference exist at all? Why should physical matter, like the squishy cells in our brain, suddenly wake up and have a subjective experience, while silicon chips don't? Well, in academic philosophy, this is known as the hard problem. Coined by the philosopher David Chalmers, it's defined as the absolute mystery of why and how consciousness exists at all. We can map out the brain, sure, and we can trace the electricity firing between neurons, but none of that physical mapping explains why it feels like something to be you. Understanding the mechanics of the brain, that's actually considered the easy problem. The hard problem is explaining the subjective experience itself. And according to the source material we are examining today, a strictly materialist framework completely fails to solve this puzzle. Materialism, which is the idea that absolutely everything can be explained purely by physical matter and its interactions, hits a massive wall right here. When it comes to the hard problem of consciousness, the source notes quite clearly, materialism has no answer. It just cannot explain how unconscious matter suddenly generates subjective awareness out of nowhere. Section 4, The Ultimate Clue. And here is the fascinating twist in the source's argument. All of this artificial intelligence, all of these massive trillion-parameter language models, they wouldn't even exist without the human mind that designed, coded, and built them in the first place. The very tool we are using right now to marvel at intelligence is entirely dependent on the biological consciousness that preceded it. So what is that mind the product of? If our incredibly complex, pattern-matching AI requires a brilliant conscious human creator to exist, what does that imply about the human mind itself? The source asks us to actively engage with this logic. If the machine requires a mind, where does the mind come from? To try and resolve this, the source material draws upon a deeply philosophical and theological perspective. It brings forward this incredible historical quote from 1922, written by the scholar Nursey. "The human being is God's most comprehensive fruit." The source actually presents this as its ultimate conclusion, that human consciousness isn't just some random accident of blind matter, but rather a deliberate, comprehensive result of a higher design. It posits that our unique ability to experience, to understand, and to create is actually the pinnacle of a much grander reality. So let's bring this all together. When we look at this contrast one last time, we see two entirely different realms. On one hand, we have the machines we've built, incredibly powerful, mathematically astounding for sure, but completely empty inside. They merely mimic thought with absolutely no lived experience behind it. On the other hand, we have true conscious reality. We have you, a biological marvel running on the power of a tiny light bulb, experiencing the rich beauty of the universe, and completely capable of designing the very machines that try to copy you. The difference between those two sides is just vast, but our source material leaves us with this final, incredibly powerful realization. We built something that acts exactly like it thinks, but feels absolutely nothing. That gap between artificial mimicry and true human consciousness, that isn't a glitch in our technology. That gap isn't a bug. It's a clue. It is a clue pointing directly to the extraordinary, irreducible mystery of your own nature. So I'm going to leave you with this to ponder today. If you are the ultimate consciousness that creates the machine, what else is your mind capable of unlocking? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating source material with me, and hey, never stop wondering about the mind behind your own eyes.